So with all our dignitaries in the room, it is time for us to begin. So ladies and gentlemen, first up for our session moderator, somebody who's got a vast experience across the entire gamut of real estate services. We're talking about valuation, consulting, transactions, and project management. Working with the clients across the governments, corporations, and the public sector companies. We're going to have Gulam who's going to be joining us shortly. But before that, first up, I'd like to call upon our speakers. The founder and MD of Liases Foras Real Estate Rating, we're talking about Pankaj Kapoor. Can we have a warm round of applause for Mr. Kapoor? Well, Pankaj has 20 plus years of experience in the field of valuation, consulting, and risk analytics. He's an acclaimed expert in analyzing and predicting real estate market trends in India. Thank you so much, Pankaj, for joining us today. Well, with that, if we could have the CMD and Chief Mentoring Officer of Paradigm Realty, Parth Mehta, to kindly join us. Parth brings with him over 15 years of management expertise and leadership in the areas of real estate analysis, strategies, valuation, business development, fundraising, corporate sales, and investment with due diligence. Thank you so much, Parth, for joining us today. Also, if you could now have the Senior Director, ICICI Venture, Puneet, Bhatia, to join us. Well, Mr. Bhatia has 29 years of diversified experience spread across investment banking, private equity, lending, and structured finance in Indian real estate. As one of the early stage real estate professional, he's played a pivotal role in shaping markets, working in international property consulting organizations, large private sector bank, as well as global financial institutions. Thank you so much, Mr. Bhatia, for joining us. On that note, it is time for me to now call upon the partner Trilegal, Samira Lalani, to kindly join us. Let's give our lady a warm round of applause. Well, Samira is a part of the firm's real estate and corporate practice group and is also a specialist in the real estate sector and has advised and managed the entire gamut of real estate transactions. Thank you so much, Samira, for joining us today. If I could now have the CEO of Ruparel Realty, Sanjeev Chandiramani, to kindly join us. Well, an accomplished and an astute real estate professional with master's degree in management studies, having over 20 years of dedicated work experience in the real estate sector. Thank you so much, Sanjeev, for joining us. And on that note, if I could now have the honor of calling upon the Senior Executive Director, Research Advisory, Infrastructure and Valuation, Knight Frank India Private Limited, Gulam to join us. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, let the applause continue as we have Gulam, who's going to be helping us with the curation of this entire conversation. Gulam, thank you so much for your valuable time. With that, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, sorry, it's afternoon already. Lost the sense of time because the company I had for last half an hour, 45 minutes was enticing and very exciting to interact with. I'm sure the session will continue, and the way I enjoyed last half an hour of interactions with all of them, I'm sure all of you will enjoy hearing them all. So big round of applause to all of them. Okay, so the discussion point that I am asked to present to these speakers is on housing boom. How do we see this whole housing boom changing? This, of course, has come after almost about a decade of a bad time for residential real estate. Last year and a half or two is something which every developer is extremely excitedly talking about. Things have turned around. Things have really looking far better. And if real estate cycle is anything to go by, then perhaps we are just about crossing, have moved from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock position, and we have a long way of good time ahead. So I'm sure that is something which all the developers would agree upon. At least two of them are here. I'm sure we'll have to pick their brain a lot to understand what's their perspective on the booming real estate, residential real estate market. But there are a lot of these pointers that we, in last half an hour, 45 minutes, we've been discussing. I would be glad to present it to all of you. And these, of course, there are some 8-10 pointers which Sapna and the team had put across. I said it'll be difficult to go by a script. So we decided to make our own pointers. So today, it's absolute free for all. And all of them have agreed to pour their hearts out. What I spoke about earlier, Parth was not there. I said that many of these sessions in last 3 decades I've been experiencing, people normally sitting on stage don't share their real thoughts. It's only what is, the politically correct statements are what are coming out on such platforms. So I requested them to be very, very open, pour their hearts out as to what exactly it is, because it's very rare when people agree to do that, and I'm sure all of you will enjoy their inner thoughts about how the whole industry is looking at right now. So to start with, I would actually start with you only, Parth, that we are looking at a great future of next at least 2-3 years for real estate to come forward. And that's where we left for you 10 minutes back. I was asking you this question. That number of developers have actually shrunk. I don't want to get into numbers, kitne kam hue, kya hue, vagara. But as we go forward, the boom in the industry and overall economy, Indian economy is kind of decoupled. We are looking at least next 10 years or 20 years of a runway kind of growth in economy from 3.5-4 trillion to maybe 20-25 trillion in next 20-25 years is what we are talking about. Do you feel we have enough number of developers out there to cater to that kind of demand? Or do you think it has to increase, maybe 2-fold or 10-fold more number of developers? Or is it that people like you tomorrow would be the ones who would be doing 20-30,000 crore per annum kind of turnover? Over to you, Parth.
Good afternoon, friends. Thanks, Sia. I think in one question you asked 3 questions. So the first part is, are there enough developers? I'll break into 2 parts. There are enough developers, but how many compliant developers are there who have a bandwidth, infrastructure, logistics, know-how to manage a particular scale and size? Because the entire paradigm of the entire cycle of development is not just one-faceted, it's multifaceted, where right from funding to having the right team to be having sales expertise, ability to deliver what the micro market wants, think ahead of time of what is going to be absorbed even in a cycle, because in one project from start to end also 2-3 cycles come. So something you may launch as a product may be redundant after 3 years. We've seen it very well pre-COVID, during COVID and post-COVID. Last 5 years we've seen 3 cycles. So I feel the compliant developers who have that kind of mechanism and infrastructure are limited. So that brings into 3 categories of developers. One are the listed big boys who are there pan-India, they are present everywhere, who's got the listed game, who's got the whole things of showing and clocking revenue. Then there are mid-sized developers who are still approachable, who's got the know-how bandwidth, but still are privately held, backed by good financial institutions who are doing joint ventures and partnerships and a kind of synergy-wise growing. And then there are small developers who are doing 2-3 redevelopments at a time, limited projects, limited infrastructure. So I feel every micro market has these 3 blends. As a personal belief, person who focuses in each micro market, there is more than enough work today, because the way MMR especially is growing, the way influx of money is coming in, the kind of GDP numbers that are coming in, I think this is just, we are at absolutely bottom of a boom time, where I'm not trying to say boom in terms of pricing or in terms of velocity, but in terms of consolidated growth over a period of 5 to 10 years. I think we are in just the upward curve. Next decade is ours. Answering your second question is, with the change in which developers are working, now I think whoever is today there in the RERA era are all working with one intent, that they don't want to go behind bars. So everything is coming reverse from there. That A, can we complete it? B, can we sell? C, can we get a financial closure? D, in this whole way, can we get out of a project in 2-3 years depending on the life cycle? Otherwise, as developers, 1 year project is delayed, we don't make any money. Or if last 10% stock is not built well or sold well, we don't collect any money. So it's a very thin catch-22 where I feel you're on a tight rope. Unless you have the entire gambit of the marathon stitched, you can't do it. So I still believe, like I was telling you there, we believe as Paradigm, we'll do less work, but only where our car travels, so that we can control that micro market in all aspects, and we have some dominance in whatever market we work at. So that's my
I like
thought
the way
process.
twice you have brought in your brand. I'm asking you the same thing again. When do I see the paradigm shift for you to go absolute national?
Not in the distant future for sure, next 5 years, because we are still a growing company who's just started few years back. We would like to put our foot down solid and look at ourselves consolidating in MMR or maybe Mumbai suburbs and then look forward. So not for next 5 years for sure.
So I wish you all the best, and I hope
Thanks.
that paradigm is all over the country soon,
Thank
even
you, sir.
before you talk about it. So here I would want to come to you, Samira, because when a developer starts to, look at a certain project, the first thing they need obviously is a legal help, and that's where you come in. And I'm sure you have a very pan-India kind of view as well. I am, while we are sitting in Mumbai, many of them say that most of your discussions are very, very West-focused, and while we are talking about boom for the Indian housing market, I don't want to be restrained or restricted to West or Mumbai alone, and hence, the focus is, of course, I will come to others as well on that same thing. But from you, I would want to know, Samira, you must be meeting lots of these developers. What is the frame of mind out there, the developer fraternity? What kind of products? Are they very excited? Are they talking about taking a lot of new projects, etc.? What's your purview right now? Of course, we'll come to RERA slightly later. That's, I'm sure, your focus. Legally, professionally, that's your focus. But before that, to understand from you, what is the behind the curtain story that you are witnessing?
So, hi everyone. So, being a part of the legal fraternity, right, we do get the opportunity to see both sides of the real estate, construct. Clearly, we do see the outlook of the developers, and clearly, while not speaking about the West alone, right, we also do a lot of work for developers in the North, and at least their prediction and their estimates in terms of how the market is going looks pretty optimistic, right? Of course, while there is a set of inflation, etc., and a larger external control in terms of how the inflation is playing out, etc., may not look very good at this juncture, right? But at least in terms of the markets that they are having a good grip on, right? They are pretty certain that so long as they have the bandwidth in terms of acquisition, a good line of sight in terms of funding, in terms of delivering it on time, right? I haven't really seen any hesitance in developers trying to approach or launch new projects or trying to avail new set of funding, including a lot of funds, in fact, are pretty optimistic, and I've, in fact, seen a lot of switch in terms of large-scale foreign funds from moving from the West, including the A-lister developers, to actually moving to the North and trying to be optimistic to fund a lot of developers who are just budding and upcoming and haven't really flourished there. So I do note that brand name plays a big role, but in terms of markets and the overall prospects, they do look good.
Do you see a lot of new developers coming up? Typically it happens when the cycles turn. During each cycle, a few of these old developers would fall by the wayside. A few of them would be born, new developers, etc. Do you see that phenomenon? From where do you see, from your vantage point, do you see a lot of new resources also coming up for real estate development?
So there are new players in the market, but it's all, as I said, it's more of a construct of how much are they acceptable in terms of the customers, right? Because at the end, what is marketed should also sell, right? So trying to put up the brand image, trying to ensure that you delivered enough, right? To ensure that you have that comfort amongst the customers who precisely are the ones who make or break your development, right? So I do see new prospects and new builders, of course, trying to, set up their feet in the market. But at least in terms of how flourished would they land up being in the coming years is something which I don't think would be very steep. It will be staggered. But as I said, that experience plus what you actually implement sells. So clearly there are some players who are not big names, so to speak, at least in terms of the marketing and promotion, but they're doing well.
Thank you so much, Samira. I'll come over to now Puneet. Puneet, we spoke about this point. You have been on very wide experience of Indian funds and international capital, etc. My question, and this is where I would go back to connect with where I left it with Parth, that if you have support from such professionals coming in, why won't Parth still go national? So here, your perspective. Sir, आपको लगता है कि when there are such promising developers coming up, would you be keen to experiment with such new energies as well and take your funding games to where it matters, where you would want to broad base the whole real estate fraternity and the industry itself?
Sure, thanks Gulam. And thank you, Realty Plus, for this opportunity. Now, a few years back, I think I was on one of these Realty Plus panels before I actually answer Gulam's question. And, we were discussing, and I actually ended up with a share because it was a situation where residential seemed to be, and this is slightly before pre-COVID the time, 2019, commercial was booming. And I said, Raat jitni bhi sangeen hogi, subah utni hi rangeen hogi. And here we are after a couple of years talking about decoding housing boom, right? So now, so I think we did try to do everything, and COVID in a way has been blessing in disguise, which has actually pushed the residential sector. Actually, Parth's answer really is a beautiful answer, and this shows a maturity of the developers, which was, and we have seen all booms, right? We saw it in 90s, we saw it in 2006 with the FDI capital. What did he say? He said, not in the distant future. So that dots in the map, which was so much prevalent, in that 2005-6 era when we had the press note 2 and those, spread across various cities, they are very focused now. So there's a lot of maturity with the developer. They have seen the phases, they have seen the life, and they only would get into cities where they have basically feel that they have an infrastructure in place. Coming back to ICICI, obviously ICICI will support if there's a proper infrastructure, there's a thought-through plan by the developer to enter into that new city, because it is just not the launching, the execution capability of the developer to kind of complete the project. So from a risk perspective, I think we would obviously see a lesser risk with the developer who has delivered in a X city and has done his homework to get into another city, and that would be perfectly fine from our perspective. Regarding the number of developers, we talk about a lot of developers have actually come in. We were looking at some kind of a data on developers who have actually launched 100 crore plus, or not launched, I would say sales of 100 crore plus in the last year. There were only 360 developers pan-India out of about 14,000 odd developers. The rest of them, about 13,000 odd crores, were selling less than 100 crores. I'm talking about the top line, right? So effectively, the number of developers, while have definitely gone up, new players have entered. The existing ones have deleveraged the balance sheet. But I think there's a lot of caution and maturity amongst the developers to actually get into the newer projects. Thanks.
Yes, so we'll continue on that, and there I would want some data to come in, and who better than my friend Pankaj to talk about data, and as Knight Frank, I'm not allowed to talk about my data, so I'll only focus on yours, Pankaj. So Pankaj, here, a lot of these mysteries around what exactly is happening out in the market. While we're there, we'll also obviously come to the segmentation of the market, how a certain segment is doing well, how the upper end is doing well, and your perspective on how the numbers are changing, but very perniciously, very gradually, how the things are changing in the industry itself. What we spoke about, that currently more than 50% or almost about 60% are the sales which are mid to upper end of the housing. Lower end of the housing is right now apparently not doing too well. Your view on that, Pankaj, what exactly is the myth? What is the mystery?
There is a certain decline we have seen in the last financial year, although the market has really grown overall. So if you see from the data, the overall market grew in terms of value around 45% from FY22 to FY23. And that's a very big jump, and largely because the reason is we are coming from the 6 years of almost price stagnancy and then the price correction during the COVID time. The price and affordability gap got reduced, and during the COVID time, people realized the importance of the house, and then there was a demand which was there. So the gap which was available during the affordability and prices actually got bridged, and we have the parities of 2004, 2005 level. We have never seen. So if you see the inflation-adjusted affordability and interest-adjusted prices, we have the parities of 2004, 2005. And that's a basic reason why, despite COVID, we have seen a surge in sales in the real estate sector because there's no dearth of the demand. We are a housing shortage country. We had 1.8 crore housing shortage. We are likely to have around 9 crore housing shortage by 2036. So the housing shortage, as long as there's no dearth of the demand. Only thing is when the parity takes place in the affordability in houses, in prices, the volumes takes place, and this is what has happened during this period. Question comes is that why we saw the decline in the last year in the affordable segment. 2-3 reasons is that the withdrawal of the CLSS schemes from March 2021 onwards actually saw a lesser number of this thing. Secondly, that the builders are shying away taking the projects in the no man's land. So mostly what happens, the vectorizations of the affordable housing actually is such that the land cost pushes us too far away from the city centers, which becomes uninteractive. So eventually, earlier, if you look at the last decade when the affordable housing projects got launched into the far-flung locations, most of these projects were being sold to the investor because they were not interactive to the end user market. And today's surge in the market is not an investor-driven surge, or the demand is not investor-driven. So either it is upgradation demand or it's a completely first-time end-user demand. So the supply needs to be interactive, and that's a basic reason builders were not launching the projects in the far-flung areas. So the supply contraction took place, and the demand comes from the supply. So if supply gets contracted, so you see the lesser number of sales which is taking place. So there was a situation which is there, but having said that, I see a recovery. So if you see last 2 quarters, there is a reversal trend started showing in, because now we are into a mature state of the demand is getting matured, prices started strengthening, the gap between affordability and prices which were so good in the manner like, it shrunk so much that there was a parity. Now it is coming back, it has started widening because interest rate also has gone up and things like builders also have increased the prices. So we see a bit of a decline in the luxury and the ultra luxury segment in the last 2 quarters. So there was a 20% decline in the last quarter from the previous quarter in the luxury and ultra luxury segment. And there was a 12% and 15% improvement in the priority sector and affordable segment. And my own sense is the way the government has also decided and announced recently that 600 billion rupees worth of the initiative the government is planning to take for the affordable housing, the revival of the CLSS schemes, and it's going to be much bigger in that. So I see, it's a short-lived story of luxury and ultra luxury because the reason everyone wanted a bigger house and everyone wanted to upgrade. So we saw which has happened. Going on a story is going to be again a mid and affordable in the this segment. And point further is that India has improved quite a lot in terms of the infrastructure connectivity. So by 2024, the numbers of infrastructure projects which is going to get ready, especially like Mumbai, think about Trans Harbour if it is getting ready, what kind of impetus you'll see in the Navi Mumbai sectors and all. So, and that is where the boost of the affordable housing will start really taking place. The Parth, who is actually shying away taking a new this thing because he doesn't want to reach Panvel in 45 minutes, but assuming the Trans Harbour takes place and then he's reaching in 45 minutes over there, I think he'll be picking up the land parcels over there.
Good, great. So good, you're actually showing a lot of ways for developers to also, I think for the first time I heard Pankaj talking so candidly about the changing scenario, how the winds are turning, because for last at least a year or so, everybody's talking about, super luxury, high-end, etc. What Pankaj was talking about.
Yeah, Gulam, since you allowed me again, there are certain points which I also want to say that, the narratives which we are talking about is, the market driven by the one large developers. And your point of view and the fancy of that, we are not seeing national level players. I'm saying that during the 2006, 2007, there was a surge or the aspirations of the developers who were picking lands all over. And then there was a consolidation took place, but within themselves, builders sold out their other cities where they didn't have the focus. And then they concentrated on their own country. My point of view is that we are seeing China story, a developer who actually grew too big and fall. We are seeing across the world. I'm not really able to find out one developer, two developer, or three developer who are a global developer, who are a national developer. And the reason being is why I'm saying that and seeing the data also. The market itself is a micro market and local market. So it creates a glass ceiling beyond which it becomes hard for a developer to continue to be expanding and becoming bigger and bigger. And I'm giving examples. Some of these listed developers are doing very badly in the affordable segment because they're not finding their price point interacting to the local demand. So some of these like Badlapur market and some of these markets, so you have got large developers who have launched the projects and their sales and the construction progress is far below than the local developer because local caters to the dynamics of this. Third point, Puneet, as we mentioned, he says that there are only handful of the developers who are 350, 360 developers who are actually garnering 100 crore plus sales. But there are several other smaller developers. So if you go a place like Pushpak Nagar, you would find a developers or close to 100 or 200 projects got launched in the recent times and 5-story flats. So if you take 5 developers together as a cluster, he'll be crossing 100 crores. And that is what is happening in the market. So instead of consolidations and one developer becoming too big and certain developer dictating the overall, their own positions across the landscape, the real estate, I see what's happening is the broad basing. There are numerous number who are growing, and the way the RERA is enabling. So earlier what happens that most of the lenders were focused on to top 100, top 200 developers and say that I'm happy lending to that. And my experience working with likes of Piramas, LIC, SBIs and all those things, they are willing to extend their credit now to the smaller developers. And their ticket size is becoming as small as 15 crores to 50 crores. And that's what I see the landscape of the real estate is going to grow.
Great.
So
Yeah,
Zia,
Parth, yeah, yes.
just budding in because I'm sitting with a very profound statistician next to me who's very good with numbers. So I just have some statistics because being a part of the managing committee of MCHI, we did a research report. This is very interesting, which I felt like sharing. As per the World Health Report this year, we have a total number of, we are the 12th wealthiest city in the world with a $950 billion of private wealth lying in Mumbai. Now, if we take this into consideration, sticking to your subject of decoding housing boom, so I'll just move slightly away of what would help it actually to keep it remained as a housing boom is a Hyderabad, a Bangalore has premiums which are 25 to 50 times less than Mumbai today, what we are paying to municipality. To the room sizes of a 1 BHK, which used to be 20 years back or 10 years back, used to be 600, 650, which is now 350, 400 is a luxurious 1 bed. A 2 BHK, which used to be 850, 900, 15 years back, now 550, 650 has become a norm. Otherwise, size, price, ticket size. These 3 things, our sales guy will demotivate us and we'll go back on the drawing board. Third, an average rate per square feet across all the metros, if you see Hyderabad, Bangalore, everywhere, is about 9,000 rupees on carpet. MMR is the only place which is 19,000 as an average rate. Now, with this, what does it mean? That as a forum, as MCHI CREDAI, we are making representations to CM, Revenue Department, Housing, UD, everywhere, that until this entire fix, whether it's a stamp duty reduction, premium reduction, or on and on we can go on for other benefits are not coming in, the actual affordability in Mumbai is never going to come. Because the laws inside itself are contradicting each other so much that if as a developer, we don't make, let's say, 20% margin on a project on a good day event, assuming we complete in 2 to 3 years, we'll not take up a project. And we can't sell below a certain price. So you don't get even GST benefits, etc. because those price cap in Mumbai and MMR can't reach 45 lakhs, etc. So I feel it's a systemic issue, which according to me, my plea to all the fellow developers is this 6 months of election time is a good time where our selection of a party in our state should be on the basis who gives us a commitment of what they're going to do for the buyers, what they're going to do for the premium. So this boom can actually be aggregated, and there's a much required steroid which would come in, where actually a dream of all the home buyers can buy their affordable homes will come true in the next 10 years. Yeah.
Okay, great. You actually have taken it to the next level where the policymakers have also been dragged into this, and unfortunately we don't have a representation from their side. So I would rather not go too much into, policymakers or the politics, etc. thereof. Sanjeev, I'll come to you. And because Ruparel and Mumbai, once again, like even in case of Parth, also the same situation it was. Paradigm was also very, very Mumbai-centric developer. And we spoke about this concern, and because Pankaj has brought us into the discussion of affordable housing per se, what is it that keeps Mumbai so unaffordable? Like if and Pankaj spoke about it, that tomorrow with metros going to say Bhiwandi and even Vasai Virar, etc., infrastructure piece falling in place, what would it take for somebody like even Ruparel to also look into affordable housing and cater to that segment? I'm sure the discussion of RERA we spoke about 70-30, etc. We'll get Samira also to come into that. But your perspective, what does it take for somebody like you all to actually cater to the lower end of the market?
So as a group, good afternoon everybody. As a group, we have actually focused a lot on the so-called affordable housing segment. Majority of our stock, more than 50% of our stock is actually 1 BHK in this market. So it might not be falling under the definition of affordable, as Parth really said it and hit the nail on the head. See, we are paying 25 times the premium, compared to the other states, whereas probably the price which we are able to achieve is 2.5 times average above most of the other states. So I think that is one very key aspect of, getting the pricing down or entering really into the affordable space. In genuine terms, we would say that as a group, we still perform and have a large stake in the affordable space, which is actually selling in today's Mumbai's market based on the pricing. I think one of the key things, I'll just step back into the conversation. Does this industry require more developers, as you said? I would rather, and I'm sure Parth also will probably second this, I think this industry requires more banks, more funds, to be very frank. For us to be successful, the access to capital has to be far more easier. We are probably the only industry, we are actually not an industry also in that sense, but from that perspective, we are the only industry which does not have access to capital for its raw material. So I think, all these factors play a big role in terms of, how growth will happen and how the boom will actually progress. Secondly, one has to look internally as well. I mean, if today the entry barriers for this industry is quite high. RERA is quite regulated. The investment in any kind of project is relatively high compared to what it was earlier. These so-called fly-by-night operators don't exist anymore. So, frankly speaking, one has to look internally also if he wants to move and become a national player. One has to strengthen its base, move forward, establish all the compliances as is rightly put across, try and achieve some semblance of capacity in the city or the local city where you're in before actually thinking ahead. So Parth has also said it in the same way, but I would rather say that premiums, and I think at the end of the day, access to land. Now, I believe with the infrastructure projects which are coming up, access to land will become a little bit more, or lands would become much more accessible. And that is where affordability and the boom of affordability will happen. If I can reach Gujarat in 4 hours in a train, which is far more affordable, I think all these aspects and the towns in between, all these aspects are what will basically contribute to your affordable housing boom. So
Sure. Now that's two things you have rigged up, and I would want to, and I saw some smirk on Puneet's face. I will come to him when you rigged up or you spoke about the capital availability. But the other thing that you spoke about was about infra and how at least access to land is improving. Well, in Mumbai, where we are sitting right now, it may still be a pipe dream, a distant situation, but something happening in NCR already. You call it Rapidex or high-speed rail, which is already shaped up, something which not many of them are aware of. Perniciously, it has happened. The rail is ready to be opened up. Ribbon cutting ki der hai. This is something which is connecting Meerut to CP Connaught Place in Delhi in less than an hour, doing 200 kilometer per hour kind of a speed. And we are not yet talking about bullet, which will be 450 plus kind of a Mumbai-Ahmedabad situation. But things are changing fast. So if a 200 kilometer per hour kind of a train will be plying in Maharashtra, Pune will be a suburb of Mumbai. And I'm sure things will change drastically. But before that, coming to Puneet, how would you respond to it? Do you continue to believe that capital is so hard to get? You and I were talking about it while Sanjeev was also there, that going forward, the capital accessibility is going to improve a lot. What's your view on that aspect?
So first of all, let us look at the capital availability in terms of the total book size and total stock. So roughly we have about 19 lakhs crores of value of under construction residential real estate, right? It used to be about 2.2 lakh crore in 2009. So roughly we're talking about 8x increase of the value of the under construction residential real estate. हम एक साल के अंदर about 5 trillion INR के आसपास का माल बेचते हैं. I'm talking about the data of 20 top cities. So that is the residential segment. What is the total book size of all the banks, AIFs, listed NCDs, NBFCs, HFC put together? About $115 billion. Now the fact remains that, yes, is it sufficient or do we need a more solution capital? So solution capital is, I think, where Sanjeev is alluding to. So one is obviously the bank capital, which is purely for the construction. I think that is available in abundance to the right developers, right? Again, I'm using the right developers because Pankaj alluded to the fact when I said 360, I think the bigger opportunity is that 14,000 developers to get into the 360 mode. The opportunity is there, right? It is obviously, you can't keep on funding just the 360 developers and say that, you know, my books are there. So the bigger opportunities on that front. Now, I think, yes, the capital, again, we put the capital into two baskets. One is obviously the structured credit capital, which is a high cost capital. That high cost capital obviously comes with a certain riders. And largely, again, if I look at the AIF numbers, it's about 70,000 odd crores or 75,000 odd crores of AIF capital already there. In fact, that number surprised me when I saw it for the first time, because I had expected a much lesser number to be in that space. So go ahead. The problem is really in the fact that the equity capital, which used to be there in the pre-Lehman era, is actually not coming from the offshore players. So most of the foreign players who have basically set up the books in India, and I mean, when you suppose you look at the top 5, 7, they are only concentrating on the credit part of it, and equity capital is not coming, right? And that is where the developers would want them to participate. I personally feel that I think in the near future, you will have a certain platform, like you used to have office platforms. You had an Embassy, Blackstone platform, DLF, GIC platform. So the first course of capital on the equity side would come with a certain segment of developers to start with, which I think is a good start. But, you know, इतने सब numbers के बावजूद भी I think हम लोग कितना कर बेचते हैं, housing boom का बात कर रहे हैं. We sell what, 4 lakhs? I mean, Pankaj would have the exact numbers. Roughly 4-4.5 lakh घर बेचते हैं, right? On a top 7-8 cities. अभी सितारों के आगे जहाँ बहुत है, चाइना 1 crore घर बेचता है, अमेरिका 65 lakhs के आसपास बेचता है. So look at the number of growth and potential versus the population we have and the homes we are talking about a housing boom. At 4 lakhs units of sales on a pan-India basis, we are only talking about housing boom, right? There's a larger opportunity which is there.
Thank you so much for drawing our attention towards that. I'll come to that, Pankaj, and I'm sure Parth is already worried because on both his sides, profound numbers are thrown. अभी इन्होंने भी सारे डेटा के ऊपर, कैपिटल के ऊपर सारे नंबर्स आपके सामने रख दिए. अभी इसके इम्तिहान और भी हैं साहब, आपने सिर्फ पहला मिसरा पढ़ा, मैं अगला पढ़ रहा हूँ. उनमें से एक इम्तिहान रेरा है. You know, we wanted to talk about it, that how RERA is in a way a problem, while it has really cleansed the system a lot, especially for those who are sitting in Mumbai, cursing that 70-30 thing, you know, because 70% of your money stuck up in escrow, whereas your cost of construction is so minimal in Mumbai compared to the rest of the country, where your land cost itself is almost half of your project cost goes in land procurement. So here, I'll come to you, Samira. Is there a possibility of the center relooking at the act? You know, because that 70-30 apparently is something which is imposed from center on all states. Should it really change state to state? A particular state where the product is so different than, say, Mumbai. Should they look at something else than what it is? Should we, you know, and going back to what Parth was talking about, if we have access, suppose we have access to the policymakers and the electorate, etc., can we make them realize that how a few of these markets are so different than the rest of the country? Is it possible legally to draw to that conclusion?
While I appreciate that, you know, this is something that's been imposed by the center, and the idea, of course, is to have a customer-friendly legislation, considering it was a long overdue sort of an implementation that was required, at least in the system and the fast-growing real estate industry, right? But I'll just try to, you know, dig in the fact of how 70-30 works across various states and where there are some pain points and where there is still some level of flexibility that the developers are getting, right? Now, speaking about Maharashtra, which I'll at least put up in terms of being one of the most organized, at least state RERA boards, right, compared to all other states, right? So while, of course, there is a 70-30 split that's been mandated by the center, and that's something that's being followed across all states, a lot of states at least have gone forward to impose further clarity of what exactly is your 70, what exactly can be withdrawn, what exactly is you're supposed to keep aside, and how will the actual implementation mechanics work, right? Now, Maharashtra has at least been flexible enough to say that your funding cost and the interest payments, right, equally do form a part of your project cost and should be withdrawable from the 70, while, of course, you're asked to put aside a lot of amount, right? Equally, an NCR, just to do the flip of it, has come up with stark circulars saying that any financing and interest payments that you're required to do, right, should only be from your 30% free flow and can't be out of 70. Now, while the law is what it is, just in terms of implementation and the perspective with which each of these state boards are looking at the interpretation of, you know, a lot has been just to put out there. While RERA has mandated a lot of broader framework, a lot has been left amongst the state boards to interpret in terms of the nitty-gritties of what and how would that really be implemented, right? So I think changing the stark 70-30 right at the center may not really be something that can happen as easily as how we speak, but getting clarity at least in terms of the state boards, in terms of how this would play out, what's permitted, what's not permitted is something clearly that we can look at. And of late, we have at least seen instances, at least in terms of circulars, clarities, and some jurisprudence and orders that's been passed by various state RERA boards, where there is some level of flexibility that's now being granted for easing out the cash crunch that's happening because of the split that's been mandated.
Thank you so much, Samira. So a lot of these issues we spoke about. I think last 10 minutes, let's talk about future. What are we going to look up to? एंड ये इन्होंने ऑलरेडी वो आधा शेर सितारों के आगे जहाँ और भी हैं कह छोड़ा है सो इसके लिए आई हैव टू गो बैक टू पार्थ अब यू हैव टू लिव विद अ बिट ऑफ अ मोर ऑफ अ डेटा currently Indian real estate size is assumed to be about $500 billion US, out of a 3.5 trillion of the overall GDP closing on to 4. And I'm sure, Pankaj, I will need you to chip in. I'm sure you will have your perspective on the data as well. I'm told, looking forward, next 25 years, apna time aaya hai, Bharat is what it is all about, India growing, decoupled from the global economy, etc. Worst case scenario, the numbers I was looking at is $30 trillion US economy for India in next 25 years, going up to 35 to 40 trillion as well. Some numbers are, stark. So even if I look at the lowest end, we are looking at almost about 6.5 to 7 trillion of real estate alone out of that. These are big numbers, and ये सितारे हैं जनाब, आप जिन सितारों की बात कर रहे थे, ये वो सितारे हैं जिनकी हमें बात करनी है, सितारों के आगे के जहानों की. तो अगर हम ये talking about future, here is the big question, and this is why I was talking about time and again, are we ready, are we geared up? उसमें से जो obstacles थे, आपने जो इश्क के इम्तिहानों की बात की, चाहे वो रेरा हो या capital availability हो या state of preparedness हो, इतनी सारी बातें हुई हैं. In सब के लिए, are we, as a group of people, of course the policy makers are not here on this podium, Are we really geared up to march in that direction? It's very good path to talk about it, कि अगले 10 साल में हमारा time है and growth and all that. But at sometimes it also sounds scary that all you know, we may not be geared up to do all that. Pankaj, before anything else, what your data observations say, whatever numbers I spoke about, do you agree to those data points or you believe it is exaggerated?
You know, there is a housing requirement and there is a shortage, and I see that we need to meet it. But having said that, 95% comes into the affordable segments, and that's kind of thing which is there. You know, I'm just coming back, like, you know, I'm still lost in the previous conversation. I won't really pick some brains and all this thing. I wrote a paper some time back, Financialization and its Consequences on Real Estates. And we had discussions earlier that are we capitalizing and do we have easy capital available or not available? I'm saying that we need prudent practices and there's enough capital available. We don't need over financializations. So what has happened earlier, if you analyze, so if you look at the money went into buying lands and land prices went up so high, and the interest cost and the price actually increased the gestation period. Because of that, the interest rates really went up, and the developer market got shrunk, and then we saw the stalled projects and all those things. During the period of the recovery, which we are talking about, has been a period where we had the least access of the AIF and the foreign capital. So there is a point of view, and it's a conundrum kind of a thing, is that when there's no access to the capital and least access to the capital, we are talking about the boom in the real estate sector. And then talking about, do we need more capital? We certainly need the capital, but having said that, we need cheaper capital, and we can't really afford 18%, 19% run off the capital. I'm analyzing several projects all around. I see most of the projects actually became unviable because of the cost of the interest capital. And most of the times we see the one capital gives place to another capital, and then the cycle continues to be going on. I see the framework in which the jahan jo hai wo sunehra dikhega when we maintain a discipline. I don't want to really follow the trends, and India should not follow the trends what China said, where they claim that the 30% of the GDP is contributed by the real estate.
We are still at 5%. We have a long way to go.
And I see that that's a very good number. Even if we touch
So,
5 to 10% or 11%.
In the interest of time, what you're talking about is obviously you are the conscience keeper. You're talking about the flip side of, going bonkers over the growth numbers, etc. But from 5% to 30%, China is 30, we are at 5. We still have a long way to go, and somewhere in between.
Try to touch 9% or 10%. Don't look at that. I'm saying that real estate, your customer advances prior to financialization used to take care of 60-65% of the project cost. It came down to as low as 30% during the past 10 years and all those things. Now it has improved because the customer advances, because of the RERA and many other things has really come back, and we are seeing a prudent practice. And country like us, where the inflation is so high, interest rate is so high, we need the least amount of capital, and least amount of the capital will happen only when we have a productive pricing and demand dynamics. So
sure, Pankaj, I think cheaper capital is something which we spoke about it earlier as well. I would want to come to Parth. I'm so sorry. It's because in the last 4 minutes, the clock is ticking. Last 4 or 5 minutes remaining. So Parth, coming to you once again. What I was talking about, of course, what Pankaj spoke about also has to be kept in mind. We can't really go overboard. But then we're talking about a future which is so bright. And once again, after this entire discussion, what I started with, going back, why don't I see a path and a paradigm doing a 30,000 crore of a turnover and as an Indian player? What would still stop you after so much of a discussion we have had on this subject?
So I'll answer this in 5 quick points. One, it's absolutely unfair why the big boys or the listed players can go pan-India and small guys can't go. So that parity has to change in the next 5 years. For that, I'll say there are about 4 or 5 factors. One, flexible capital, long-term money, whether you name it equity, debt, mezz, quasi, these are all nomenclatures. Cheaper capital. 4, ease of work, because as a developer, I'm supposed to spend 95% of my time in making a great product, selling a great product, delivering a great product. But I won't exaggerate, after having a team of 350 people also, I spend 80% of the time in firefighting and only 20% on the core business where I'm supposed to put in my heart, soul, experience and my bandwidth.
But hasn't it changed in last couple of years?
No, it's not changed. It's improving. However, unfortunately...
I would add licensing as well in this.
Licensing, absolutely, everything.
80% of the time goes into licensing.
Absolutely, firefighting. So that, and most important is, I feel 60 lakhs homes and all that is a number which does not work in India micro market, but from 4-5 lakhs also, if you have to come in 10 years at 15 lakhs, rationally also, it's government policy making and hand holding. Without that, no country can flourish.
Agreed, agreed. Same point I think we spoke about earlier as well, that policy framework has to change a lot, because at least the way I look at it, one of the best policy I have found in Haryana, which focuses on well-developed housing sector. Affordable housing is the best in Haryana only because of good government policy. But coming to you, Sanjeev, and this is where I would want to also go back to what I heard, 350 developers. I think your name may not come in 350. What would change for you to be in the good books of Puneet?
I would hope I'm already in his good books. But so I think we would be part of the 350. I mean, from a turnover perspective, we did around 1,200 crores last year. So the industry has matured. See, I think we are heading towards a boom. There's no doubt about it. We all agree to that fact. You know, industry has matured. I think industry is far more developed in terms of accepting change, in terms of accepting the new laws, new regulations. It's just a matter of fact that, you know, we keep hearing something like a one window clearance at all these points of time. I've been hearing it since the start of my career, actually. I don't think we've reached anywhere. I don't even know how many windows are there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Parth. All right. So I think, yes, we need a little bit more stability in terms of rules and regulations, in terms of regimes. And, you know, very simply, this is one point. And secondly, as you said, capital, and capital at the right moment. I don't think you need capital for refinancing at all points in time, as he rightly said, because then it's just about getting into debt trap. You need capital at the right point in time. You need growth capital. You need the right kind of capital. These are the things which I would probably put forth in terms of escalating this boom further. And, you know, not about over-financialization or anything, but yes, even from 5 to 10%, the kind of finance requirements which will be there, and not just at developer level, at housing finance level also. I think we need far more stronger and bigger housing finance players also to aid this boom.
Thank you so much. I think we have come to the end of the time allotted to us. Last few seconds, I would love to, if you permit me, would want to a quick summary of what we spoke about. At least I enjoyed the discussion from all, except we missed the policymakers very badly. We would have loved to have somebody, Realty Plus, if you can bring some policymakers also on the next dollar, it will be great. So we have spoken about a bright future. India, the next 25 years belong to us. And we are looking at a huge growth trajectory. Pankaj was very candid to bring us back to the learnings from China, etc. We must keep in mind those key factors, what have gone wrong over there and how we would be different. And of course, the legal perspective, how the regulator has done a great job. And going forward, if we can make a few tweaks here and there, it would make a great place for all of us to thrive as industry. And of course, all the concerns and the heartburns that the developer spoke about, that still the single window clearance and the liaison or such a pipe dream, we still have a long way to go. I hope things will be taken care of. The policy makers and the politicians would help us make this industry well. But before I conclude, because on this platform I realized that everybody was talking about money and ultimately paisa bolta hai, to aadhe minute mein, Puneet, आपका पैसा क्या बोलता है? Are we really geared up? And you have to conclude this, and I will not say anything else. Thank you so much for all of you to hear this panel discussion. And Puneet, your last few words.
Thanks, Gulam. So पैसा वहाँ जाता है जहाँ पैसा बनता है, right? It's very simple. So money chases money. I think the good news is that, you know, again, आधा share, but मन रे तू काहे ना धीर धरे. So there's a beauty about today's market. The developers are very cautious of taking just because the funding is available. The lenders are basically wanting to lend to the developers who have certain kind of proven track record, and they're okay with the first-time developer, also many of them, because they find the opportunity and the right bandwidth. सबसे बड़ी बात, customer. Customer is doing the homework. पहले बोलते ना customer के नाम में ही मरा है, वो अब नहीं रहा है. Customer is doing the homework. He has ammunition of RERA, he has ammunition of multiple forums, and that is the beauty about today's market. So that is where I will sum it up.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much, everybody.
Get audio on my mic. Thank you. So, well, with that, a big thank you to all our esteemed speakers for joining us today. May I now have the honor of calling upon our dignitary who's going to be joining us and helping us in the felicitation. May we have the CEO of B. Kandhari Properties, the man himself, Vijay B. Kandhari. Let's give him a warm round of applause. Vijay, thank you for joining us. And could we have the mementos being passed? First up, thank you so much, Pankaj. Right in the center, Vijay, so we can get a good shot of you and all the speakers one by one. Vijay, just you and Pankaj first. Yeah, so just one by one with all the mementos. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Parth, for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause. Thank you so much, Puneet, Bhatia. Such a pleasure having you. Can we have the memento being passed? Thank you so much, Samira, for joining us at the conclave today. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause. Thank you so much, Sanjeev, for joining us on the conclave today and sharing your knowledge. And a big thank you to you, Gulam. Ladies and gentlemen, Gulam Zia, the session moderator of the conversation today. And with that, Vijay, if I may request you, along with our entire panel now, to come in together for a group photograph.